Welcome to the 3-0 show, part of the Athletic Baseball Show. It is Monday, October 10th. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris, coming off of a very exciting wild card weekend, the first of its kind with the best of three format. Eno, how's it
Dude,
going for you?
that Mariners Blue Jays game.
Brutal. It
Oh
hurts.
my
I'm not even a
God.
fan of the Blue Jays, and
Oh,
it hurts.
like literally. I mean, it literally hurt. That Springer both just like a physical representation of what was happening in the game.
Yeah, it
Just like
could have
utter
been worse,
collapse.
too.
Yeah, but I mean, you as much as it is awful for the Blue Jays, like what a moment for the Mariners. I mean, they came down from 7 runs. I was already like, okay, game 3, here we go. And they didn't look past that, and they just sort of grounded out. And one thing that did occur to me while I was watching that was, a lot of the big hits were done by the bottom lineup. JP Crawford and Adam Frazier had big hits to tie and go ahead. And remember we said, the bottom of the Mariners lineup isn't very good, but at least they make contact.
They put balls in play. They can make some things happen just because they don't strike out. And I think those are the types of hitters you want to have at the bottom of the order come playoff time because
Now there's
anything
ducks
can
on the
happen.
pond, and then you put a ball in play. Also, it is interesting to think there are some analytical backpinnings to having high contact guys late at bottom of the order, and I think it probably has to do with the fact that like when you do order optimization, it makes sense to have high contact guys later on the bottom, and I think it has something to do with defense because when their players on, you can't shift it the same way. You got to cover some bags, you know. You can't just leave full swaths open. Like you can't, if there's a guy on third, you can't shift everybody over to the left and be like, yeah, guy on third, just walk home. So there are shifts that are not, you can't do, and then you have a guy that can make contact. That's a good combination where you can't shift them. You get the guy who makes contact, and they keep the ball rolling. And you saw the bottom of the order did really well. Cal Raleigh with one of the best nicknames in baseball, the Big Dumper.
That's the nickname Cal Raleigh has officially. That's on the baseball
Yes.
reference page.
I don't know yet if it's there, but the announcers are talking about it. And like, yes, it does have something to do with his ass.
Hmm. Okay.
So he's a catcher, Big Dumper. It's pretty hilarious if you ask me, but he brought the power, and Frazier and Crawford brought the contact, and the top of the lineup got on base. So I don't know. Kudos to them. Robbie Ray, I didn't think he was keeping it close, but he kept it close enough. And then, over in the Phillies Cardinals series, I think we did see in the end some of the shortcomings of the Cardinals staff. They had their GM on MLB Network. I think somebody asked him, your pitching staff has the worst strikeout rate in the playoffs. Do you think that's going to matter? And he said, well, we obviously built this so that they would put their balls, they would allow balls in play to our great defense. And that's, it was by, he sort of said, like, we did that on purpose. And then he said, well, we'll see if it works in the playoffs. And I think, in a couple of the places you saw, they just allowed too much contact, Some of it was just Ryan Helsley's finger was hurt and he walked a bunch of guys, but in other times they just there was too much contact. That the Phillies offense was good enough to take advantage, and then the Phillies pitchers who do strike more batters out, kind of were able to finish the job off. I do wonder if Zach Eflin as closer is going to be enough in the next round, but we'll get to preview some of that.
Yeah, the Phillies A bullpen is still a concern. The further into the postseason you go, the more difficult the opposing lineups are, the bigger that weakness becomes. So I have some issue with that. But I mean, I thought the big comeback of the weekend was game 1 of that Phillies Cardinals series. I thought that 6-run ninth inning, that
Oh,
was
that
going to
was
be it. We weren't going to
amazing.
see anything that topped that. And then what the Mariners did to the Blue Jays was even a notch bigger, just in terms of the deficit that they erased. But we worried about that with the Cardinals, that their starting pitching was giving up something in every potential series in the postseason. That came back to bite them a little bit. And, we'll see if they make changes during the offseason. We'll probably do some sort of offseason preview for the teams that get eliminated as the week rolls along as well. But other thought I had was that I do like this format, even though it feels unfair. I wanted 7 games of Blue Jays Mariners, but I still
You
think
can't
this is
have 7 games and then 7 games and then 7 games and then
no,
7
no.
games. We still be playing during the winter meetings.
Well, yeah, it's because the regular season is probably too long in the grand scheme of things. Like, if the only real solution to make the playoff series longer would be to make the regular season shorter, and I don't know if that's even a conversation worth having, because it seems like it's never going to happen, or very unlikely to happen. But there was a lot going on, and I think the final headline of the weekend as a whole was Joe Musgrove being checked for foreign substances. This is the video that I think went viral beyond baseball Twitter. Like, if you watched Good Morning America on Monday morning, you may have seen
Touching his
Alfonso
ears.
Marquez checking out Joe Musgrove's ear, looking
Big,
for a foreign
shiny,
substance.
wet ears, just sopping wet ears.
So spin rates were up for Musgrove in this start. I don't know if the circumstances beyond that were the main reason why Buck Showalter wanted this check done, or what exactly led to that decision, but it was a pretty bizarre moment, to say the least.
Yeah, spin rates were up. I'm going to write a story putting all these ducks in order and proving all of the assumptions. But these assumptions are sort of well proven, and they go as such. Spin goes up when velo goes up, especially within a pitcher. And Joe Musgrove last night was up a tick. He had that postseason velo, that postseason adrenaline bump, or just that postseason, I'm going to throw closer to my max. That's what pitchers do. They throw closer to their maximum velo in the postseason. So, given that his fastball velocity, his fastball spin per mile per hour was well in line with what he'd done during the season. He'd had higher during the season, and it was well within a band. And in terms of the difference, even from his seasonal average, it was, let's say, a half a standard deviation. And for example, when we did enforcement, I saw about a fifth of the league went down 2 standard deviations in this spin per RPM per MPH. So, we've seen precedent. We know what cheating looks like. It looks like 2 standard deviations plus. This was a half a standard deviation. There's a little bit more to it because its slider spin was up more, but slider spin is just more volatile. There's just more ups and downs in slider spin from start to start. It's a trickier pitch. So I don't think there was anything there. I've also myself noticed his sweaty ass ears before. But that's probably where I went wrong. I was talking about that on Twitter last night. If you start talking about sweaty ears, then you get into this Google image search battle with people where they're like, "What about this start? This ear doesn't look sweaty." And then other people are saying, "No, that ear looks sweaty." And then it's just that's not fun. It's just a lot of people yelling, seeing what they want to see. So I'm trying to leave the fact that I've seen his sweaty ears before out of the picture, but if people were talking about Vaseline, I was like, if he's using Vaseline, he doesn't know how this thing works. Because that dude is a breaking ball pitcher primarily. He wants more spin. We're talking about how his spin is up, and Vaseline would reduce your spin because it's a how do you describe it?
It's
slippery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's slick substance.
The whole thing is called sticky stuff. So, and then, Andrew McCutcheon came out there and said, "Oh, he's using Red Hot. He probably has Red Hot on his ears to bring the adrenaline." And I was like, okay, but don't think that Alfonso Marquez would notice if he touched Red Hot. He'd be like,
Smell it.
yeah, and smell it. And wouldn't there be a reaction like, damn, that's Red Hot? So I don't know. I think he's probably just sweating and he's throwing the ball harder than he usually does. I don't know. I've seen spin rate increases where you're like, oh, what is that? And that was not one of them, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I guess in the end, it kind of just makes Buck Showalter look bad. That's how I felt about it. It kind of just made him look desperate in the moment for making that decision.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, there is something gross about the way enforcement is done, which is, they touch the hands and that's it, or a manager has to come out and be like, "Go check him," and then that's like, oh man, are the Mets going to get thrown at? And Musgrove is making the gestures at the Mets. It becomes a very personal thing. I had to go check him. And I think the real foible is not to check him because everything's on the line. I think you just do it earlier.
Yeah, that was pretty late in that appearance.
Right. It's like it just looks bad because now you're losing and you're trying to get him out of the game. If you see a spin is up and you're 2 innings in, take the shot then. It doesn't look as desperate.
The other series, by the way, the series that we haven't even mentioned yet in the first 11 minutes of the episode, Rays Guardians, it played to the script of being extremely low scoring, right? It took 15 innings on Saturday for Oscar Gonzalez to hit the game-winning home run. It was the only run of the game, and I've seen people write about it and say it was either great pitching or it was just awful offense, and we're not really sure which, but it was compelling to say the least. And
no, you find it compelling to watch?
For some people, it was almost like the bad game you couldn't look away from, or it was I love watching pitching and I love watching pitching dominate hitting, and I kind of fell more on this isn't exactly the type of baseball that I enjoy the most. Right?
Yeah,
for categorizing game types, that's not really what I'm there for.
I'm a pitching guy, so Glass now was nasty, and McClanahan was pretty nasty, and Bieber has amazing command. It's fun to watch him just drop those breaking balls on the outside corner. It's just that he's very good at what he does, but there has to be an element of risk of oh, Nolan Arenado's up, or oh, Freddie Freeman is up. You know what I mean? Like, did you see what Glasnow did to Freddie Freeman? Now you're like, whoo, that's nasty. You know what I mean? But like, there's just too many, like Owen Miller and like Jose Siri hit a homer, but like, you know what I mean? Like just these types of hitters where you're like, I don't feel like I was trying to watch it and I had to take a shower and I was like, I had to take a shower, I take a nap, I have to do all these things. And the game just kept going on and on. And then I decided I'm just going to take the shower. And I like left the game on loud so I could hear it and took a quick shower. Didn't miss anything. It's like that's how I felt about the game. So I think that you need better hitting to make you appreciate the standout pitching more. I'm not saying the Guardians are bad, and we'll have you have an interesting nugget about the Guardians in their next series. But there certainly isn't a power threat. Like, who's the power threat? You've got Jose Ramirez, and I guess Oscar Gonzalez hit that homer, but he's more of a medium power. They have, him and Naylor, kind of have medium power. I had people that work in the game texting me, both these teams should lose.
It's the opposite of Mariners Blue Jays. It was like, how about we keep the Mariners and the Blue Jays and we send the Guardians and the Rays home, which is not fair to fans of those teams. I mean,
I had a player development person text me, can either of these teams develop a hitter? It gets a little unfair. It's sniping a little bit. Probably,
it's sniping.
Teams that are a little mad or whatever, but
okay.
But still, the Guardians developed this type where it's like, okay, you can cover the zone, you have a good sense of what's a strike and what's not. But what about power?
Here's an argument for you. Mm-hmm. How is it different? What the Guardians do with the construction of their lineup, how is it really different than what the Cardinals did with their rotation? Because that's a conscious choice that an organization can make. Oh, we're going to build a pitching staff that is mostly cheap. that will pitch to contact. It's like, well, you don't really want, if your choices are avoid contact or pitch to contact, you'd choose to avoid contact. But if you have to pitch to contact, then you find guys that induce weak contact, which is a skill and a thing that the Cardinals have done.
Finding undervalued players.
Right. And it's just doing this on the offensive
Yes,
side.
but we just talked about how the Guardians had the prospects to add. And, they did try to get Franmil Reyes. So they did, they have tried to add, power hitters to a lineup that makes contact. That's what I would say is, at least develop one guy, another Jose Ramirez. Like the Guardians were last in barrel rate, which means, that's a combination of launch angles and exit velocities that produces power. And here are the teams, they were last in the big leagues. Here are the teams, I'm going to keep going until I hit a playoff team. 29th, Reds. 28th, Nationals. 27th, Rockies. There you go. 26th, Rays. So you had the two teams that can't hit the ball hard together. And, to the Rays' credit, at least they hit the ball hard in the wrong angles. Their hard hit rate is actually top half. The Guardians are last in hard hit rate, meaning many times they hit a ball over 95 miles an hour. Here are the teams above them: Oakland, Cincinnati, Washington, Angels, D-backs, Tigers. So, I don't know. I like getting some undervalued guys. I like Stephen Kwan. I like that they have an approach. But use some of your prospects that you've built up to then go get a legitimate real power hitter. You know what I mean? Like, how much better would this team be if there was another guy that could hit homers a lot, like Jose Ramirez? Like,
they'd be quite a bit better.
Is there somebody at the dead? Like what? Soto?
Even if it wasn't Soto, who else could they have reasonably
Josh
traded for?
Bell?
Anyone. Anybody that was available. They had the prospects necessary to go get that player.
JD Martinez. We put JD Martinez on their team a couple times. I don't know. Maybe the supply wasn't exactly what they were looking for. Maybe they just can't make a match. But I like having hit a bunch of singles, but their offense wasn't good. Let's just do a regular way of looking at it. WRC plus. They're the 16th best team under league average WRC plus. So that's like OPS plus. And there is no playoff team that had a worse offense.
All right. So you put it on the tee for us. Let's get to the division series. We'll just start with the Guardians and Yankees. We're already 1 foot in on getting there. Which team has more hitters with a WRC plus of 100 or better? The Guardians or the Yankees? Think about it.
I know because of the setup.
Do you know?
You wouldn't have asked me that if it was the Yankees.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not here to only trick you with trivia questions. If I was, I might have asked it that way. So you've used the context clues to your benefit. Okay, so the Guardians have more hitters with the WRC plus of 100 or higher than the Yankees. It's a 6-5 edge. But when you look at the Yankees and Guardians offenses, the hilarious thing is that the Yankees hit twice as many home runs in the regular season. Double. That's amazing. How much does it matter when one guy hits 62 of those home runs? When you look, if you figure out a way to deal with Aaron,
I don't know. There's still 190 that they hit to the 127 that the Guardians hit.
Yeah, but I guess my point is, once you get past Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Giancarlo Stanton in his current form, they're not clearly better than Jose Ramirez and Andres Jimenez and Naylor and Oscar Gonzalez. I think if they can come up with a good strategy to avoid getting decimated by Aaron Judge, they can bring the Yankees lineup down quite a bit. I think Yankees fans know this. They've seen this team go through some difficult stretches in the second half. At one point, it looked like they were going to blow an insurmountable lead in the AL East, in part because of some of their difficulties scoring runs. So I don't want to make this a David versus Goliath thing, because I think that's what most people are going to do. And I don't think it is that. I think when you look at the Guardians versus the Yankees, obviously, yes, the power advantage is something the Yankees have. They are built for it. The Guardians are not. I wonder, And you look at the regular season series too. The Yankees won 5 of 6 with a plus 24 run differential against them. I wonder though, with the Guardians having used their first 2 starters during wild card weekend, if they're almost better off in the Cole game having Cal Quantrill out there instead of burning Bieber or McKenzie against Cole, just throwing Quantrill, hoping to get Quantrill through 5 and go to the bullpen. If they actually have a better chance of winning games later in the series,
It's an interesting idea, but I think I heard a talking head on MLB Network saying Cole was their third best pitcher.
Really?
So yeah.
That person has a living room that looks like the green screen one behind me.
Yes, you can guess who it is too.
Unbelievable. I am in my new apartment. That is not what it looks like, by the way. There's a pile of boxes behind me, so I'm using the automatic. That's why I'm blurry. If you're watching on YouTube,
you just sold your athletic shares, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I had enough to buy what's behind me. Nope. No, he didn't.
But the thing is, Garrett Cole just set the strikeout rate record for the Yankees in a single season. Garrett Cole is in the top 5 or top 3 in strikeout rate in the last month, the last half year, the last year, the last 2 years, the last 3 years, the last 5 years, like whatever time period you want to look at. He strikes out a ton of guys. He doesn't walk guys either, but there has been a homer problem. He's given up 2 homers per 9 in the last 30 days. And this year, about a homer and a half. It's just not a good problem for the Guardians to exploit.
Yeah, they can't. Who's going to hit one?
Right. So they really need like a Naylor or Gonzalez homer to pair with maybe a Ramirez homer, because on the other side, the Yankees team is going to do some damage. And one thing that I like about this fall for the Yankees is that they have these 2 guys, Oswald Cabrera and Oswaldo Peraza, that are wild cards, and I'm not sure that long term they're great players because they strike out a lot, especially given their power rates. But they also are wild cards in that they could provide offense at positions that the Yankees have been struggling, a little bit. And they're young guys where maybe the book isn't as long, the scouts aren't as exactly sure what to do, and they're athletic, and if they run into 1 or 2, and then you've got Judge and Rizzo and Stanton, everybody to deal with, then they're going to be really formidable. And I'm for one of a guy who says that Cole is their best starter and is a very good starter and is probably going to win game 1.
I don't know how you could look at their pitchers they have, how you could ever have watched them, and you could draw the conclusion that Garrett Cole's their 3rd best pitcher. Like it's impossible.
I mean, you just like, Cortez is having a great season. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. He's really good. But
if your season's on the line, you could choose a Yankee starter. You're telling me that there are people who would choose Nestor Cortez over Garrett Cole?
Yes,
or Luis Severino over Garrett Cole.
Very many
Severino's
people
good.
would.
I would choose Severino over Cortez if we're trying to rank them, but I think Cole's easily their number 1. Like it's not even much of a debate for me. So
I think he's a top 3 pitcher in the game. So I don't know.
I think what's interesting about these teams though is when you stack up the pitching, it's very close to even, right? We talked about Bieber and McKenzie being a very good 1-2 going into the weekend. And just because they'll be more like middle of the series than early in the series doesn't change a lot. The bullpens, I think because of the injuries the Yankees have dealt with in the bullpen advantage might actually lean toward the Guardians right now.
Yes. At least in terms of top 2. But then we also saw a fair amount of depth in that long game. They were trotting out, Eli Morgan has a ridiculous high spin, low velo changeup, just a weird ass thing. And then Hentgen has a really good curveball that he just kept throwing over and over again. So they do have some really good relievers beyond Clase and Karinchak, who, are probably a better 1-2. I mean, Holmes has kind of lost the command a little bit in terms of stuff. I think he can hang with those 2, but then who's his Robin? Who is
With all
this
the
Robin?
injuries,
Who are we talking about here?
what's the script? Like, what's the ideal script for the Yankees if they have to get 9 outs from their bullpen? Who are the most likely candidates to get those 9 outs?
So over the last 30 days, in terms of innings, you're talking about. I think Clark Schmidt is actually going to step forward and be a reliever for them in the postseason. So I think Clark Schmidt, Clay Holmes, and Jonathan Loizaga. Loizaga's strikeout rate was just not there, but it's 73% ground ball rate. So, it's a lot of sinkers, power sinkers. Other guys
Frost is
that
the key.
Luki and Marinaccio and Trevino, I guess, are the next three.
Now, Sky Efros is part of that A bullpen. It's Holmes.
Oh,
and
that's right.
Efros
He was
like
hurt and he
main
came
two.
back. Yeah. So Efros, Holmes, and then Loizaga, Luki are the next two, and then Schmidt is in there somewhere. I think if you whatever second guy you pick next to Clay Holmes is not in terms of a duo is not going to be up there with Clase and Karinchak.
No, but they're not giving up that much.
Not that much, and you could just do Schmidt for an inning and a half, and then Holmes for an inning and a half, and Cole for 6, right? I guess you could do that in the postseason. So, the bullpen is a little bit of maybe a slight advantage, but to the Guardians. But I think I would take the starting pitchers of the Yankees over the starting pitchers of the Guardians.
5-game series is the format, of course, for the divisional series. So, who do you take, and how many games does this one go?
Yankees in 4.
I think I'm right there with you, even though I think the games are going to be a little tighter than people realize for all the reasons that we've described. So we'll match predictions on the first of the 4 series that we're going to talk about. Let's keep it in the AL before we go to the NL matchups. Let's talk Mariners and Astros. I'm excited for this series because we see these teams play a lot during the regular season. The gap is narrowing between these two clubs. The Astros went 12-7 against the Mariners during the regular season, but the run differential was only a +8 for Houston in this one. A lot to unpack, of course. We discussed the big comeback the Mariners had in Game 2 against the Blue Jays, being down 8-1 after 5. George Kirby picked up the save in Game 2 on Saturday, with 26 pitches. I don't think that would really impact his availability for the beginning of the series. I don't think we've seen the Mariners announce their Game 1 starter at the time of this recording, kind of midday on Monday. But I think the thing that really stands out to me with the Astros, and has stood out to me the entire time we've looked at them this season, they have the best pitching staff in baseball by WAR. The Mariners were middle of the pack. They added Luis Castillo at the trade deadline, so they're probably more of like a top 10 staff overall. It's a nice boost. He pitched really well in Game 1 of that Jays series, by the way. But this Astros team does not have a weakness because they're also good defensively. They score runs. They don't strike out. They have power. Their starting pitching is great. Their relief pitching is great. And their defense is awesome.
Player development is great. Their game planning is great. Their coaches are great. Like, what's not great? I think even the one sort of soft weakness, I think sometimes you might say, oh, their starting rotation is the kind that wins you regular season games. But then we've seen in October, Luis Garcia's been tired, or Jose Urquidy's been tired. I think with Lance McCullers and Framber Valdez and Justin Verlander, you've kind of said, Luis Garcia and Jose Urquidy and Christian Javier, if you only give us 2 innings, we're going to still win the game. You know what I mean? I think you put Verlander in Game 1 and he wins against anybody. You might give Luis Castillo an edge against any non-Verlander in Game 2. I think that's what you do. So maybe you win Game 2 as the Mariners. But then what happens? Then you still have, let's say the Astros use Javier, and they lose with Javier against them. Then you got Framber Valdez in Game 3, and you still haven't used Lance McCullers. I think if I was running the Astros, would make Lance McCullers a like kind of multi-inning power reliever, because I do think that would give them a bridge to their late inning relievers and keep them away from some of their relievers they may not want to use so much. And I would rather have Javier go 5, I think, innings. So I think that the Mariners are going to win 1, and maybe they're going to win 2. I don't think I can write a script where they win 3. Obviously,
Yeah, you can.
it's like, yeah, it's October, it's playoff baseball. Like, yeah, they go punch Justin Verlander in the mouth. Like not literally,
Not literally, yeah.
not literally.
No. They do to Verlander what the Padres did to Scherzer. Like that
Yeah, right.
happens once in a while. It happens, and it's just that swings a whole series. It completely changes everything. Because if you could take one of the first 2 games and you go back to Seattle, you could possibly end the series
Now
without going back to Houston.
Yeah, you surprise Fromber, you surprise somebody else. Yeah, but then I mean, game 5, you're still probably coming back with Verlander.
Yeah, so I think because of the Astros starting pitching depth, they have 6 guys that you'd actually want to start in playoff games, and they're not going to need them, of course, in a 5-game series to all start. So they can stack them up, they can hide their weakest relievers. So they're as loaded as any team in the entire field. I think it goes 5. I'm going to take Houston in 5 for my prediction for this one.
Yeah. I say they win the Luis Castillo game and they have one other surprise in them. I'll say 5. But I got to pick the Astros, man. They're just a juggernaut. It's like the Dodgers West.
It really is. Dodgers, well, they're Dodgers East.
Yeah, the AL Dodgers.
I don't think of Houston as East very often. But yeah, here we are. Let's go to the NL side. We'll start with the game that will kick things off on Tuesday. Phillies, Braves. The regular season meetings between these clubs are pretty interesting because Atlanta took the season series 11-8. Run differential was only +3. The Phillies have been a few different teams this season, right? I mean, you think about them as a team that went 28-10 against the Nats and the Marlins and 59-65 against everybody else. Or you could think about them as a team that's been 65-46 under Rob Thompson, who just got a 2-year extension on Monday and no longer has the interim tag. So which Phillies team are they really? Are they that better version they've been since making the managerial change? They're pretty healthy, and Bryce Harper homering in that series against St. Louis, just a really good sign that maybe he's closer to 100% than he was for the better part of the stretch run when the power really wasn't there. What do you think about these two teams that we see matched up against each other all the time?
I think that the bye really favors the Braves because the Phillies had to use Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola to get here, and I think that keeps them from using either of them twice. And that ends up being a big deal, I think, because, Max Fried, the Braves get to use twice, and that could be the difference. That could be the difference. What's going to happen in game 1? Ranger Suarez against Max Fried. Taking Max Fried. What's going to happen in game 2? If Strider could be back. He's on the roster, I believe, and healthy. The question is, how much length does he have? Does he become their super reliever? Or what are you doing there? I guess you just play it safe and do Kyle Wright second. In that game, it's almost a pick 'em. Like I think Kyle Wright has been that good. Kyle Wright has changed his pitch mix. He's de-emphasized the fastball. He's changed the movement on his slider and changeup, on his sinker and changeup, and he's really emphasized the curveball. He's really become a standout pitcher in this version of Kyle Wright. If it's Aaron Nola versus Kyle Wright, it's actually Zach Wheeler against Kyle Wright. Am I crazy to think that's like close to a pick 'em? Maybe
because it's in Atlanta. I mean, if we're talking about what the Vegas odds are going to be, because Atlanta's at home, it will turn out to be closer to a pick 'em.
I was just talking about the pitching matchup.
I think I still have
take
Wheeler a notch ahead of Wright. Yeah, okay. I think that still favors the Phillies.
Yeah, and then you can have Nola against Morton or Strider. That's a big difference. Because I actually, and I hate to, I hate recency bias and new toy disease and all that stuff. But I had a long conversation with Steven Strider when he was in town about whether or not this 2-pitch mix can work. And my model Stuff Plus says he's the best pitcher in baseball by stuff. I know Aaron Nola is very good. I would call it a pick 'em, Nola against Strider, and maybe even give Strider the advantage. That's how much I think of Strider. So the question would be how many innings. If Nola can go 6, obviously, can Strider. And if Strider can only go 2 or 3, and then it's 2 or 3 innings of Morton, then I'm taking Nola. But
yeah, it's pretty tricky.
And then when you start talking about the bullpens, Braves had top 3 bullpen by most metrics this season. The Phillies have a bullpen.
It's better than previous Phillies bullpens. Hey,
yes, it is.
This is the upset that I was right about, the Phillies being here. I thought they were going to steal that series in St. Louis, and they did. And part of it was an improbable comeback in Game 1, putting 6 runs on the board.
Too much faith in the devil magic.
Yeah, I thought it was coming back. Albert Pujols had that big hit late, and you could kind of feel the energy shifting even from afar. And I thought that was going to be the beginning of the turnaround for the Cardinals, and it wasn't, which was very surprising to me. But I look at this Phillies team, and I think they can hold their own offensively. It's going to come down to execution with that bullpen. Is the Phillies a bullpen as of today? Jose Alvarado, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Zach Eflin, like those are the guys they want to go to.
And
they need
David Robinson's but David Robinson, Sir Anthony Dominguez walked 12 batters per 9 in September, I believe, combined. So that's not good.
Not good, but that's a September split for relievers. That's cutting the pizza into the tiniest little pieces. That's a St. Louis pizza cut. But I don't like the.
But your relievers often are only as good as they were last week. You know what I mean? that's something that, like, there's somebody talking about. Oh, the Yankees should be worried about their bullpen, and you can look at every bullpen in the playoffs and be like, what do they do? What do they do? Like even Karinchak and Class A, what do they do after those guys? Like you can do it. Probably Cleveland's the only one where like, their bullpen's pretty good. But even I was looking at the Dodgers. They just lost Craig Kimbrell, and they lost lost Craig Kimbrell, not to like injury, but just he's lost. he's out in the forest trying to find his way home. And they had Evan Phillips and Alex Vesia as 2 top 10 relievers in baseball this year. Vesia had a top 10 strikeout rate. Phillips was top 3 reliever by Fangraphs WAR, like really excellent relievers. Do you say Phillips, Vesia, and we're good? Or do you say the Dodgers have a little bit of weakness in the bullpen? I would say almost every team has a little bit of weakness in the bullpen. Every team is like, so what are we doing about the bullpen?
It is a recurring problem for most clubs. Yeah, I would agree that the Dodgers do have that little bit of weakness that can be exploited there. We'll get to them here in just a moment.
Jansen hasn't looked unbeatable this year, So
I say that every single year. Every year. And he gets the job back, and he pitches well, and he pitches well enough to keep the job, and it comes around. It's an annual tradition now on this show to have
I'm not picking an
lingering doubts about Jansen.
I'm picking the Braves. And maybe the Phillies are going to win one of those Nola Wheeler games. I'm pretty sure. But I think that might be it. I think it might be 4. And the Braves in 4.
I want to pick an upset somewhere, and I'm having a hard time finding a place to do it. And I think that just speaks to
I'm gonna go all chalk, aren't I?
Yeah, the difference between these clubs. I mean,
at the very end, let's just pick an upset. That's separate from our picks. It's like the king of waffles here for you.
I do think the series goes a full 5. I've got Atlanta in 5. I want to see what they do if Ranger Suarez struggles. What's the plan in Game 1 to not
they punt it?
Yeah,
or do they bring somebody in,
or do you throw Syndergaard right behind him? Maybe there's a way to work around.
Maybe you go whole staff on the first game where you're just like it's Suarez, Falter, and Syndergaard, each for an inning and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think the reason why I think it goes 5 is because I really believe in this Phillies lineup. I think they put runs on the board pretty consistently all year. That's what they're built to do. I think they can score even against top end pitching. The difference between the pitching staffs is pretty small, but I would say in this case, and it's not unlike what we're talking about with Cleveland, where you move to the middle of the rotation at the beginning of the series. That can be a slight advantage depending on the makeup of the two rotations. It's less of an advantage in this case. I'd be a little bit afraid of that matchup. Suarez has been better in the second half of the season, though. He shaved almost a run off his ERA after a pretty slow start to the year. But a matchup that I think is going to be really exciting to watch play out. The last of the series we're going to talk about today, Padres, Dodgers. I saw the graphic, I think it was on SportsCenter last night. The regular season meetings between these clubs were pretty ugly in terms of just how much damage the Dodgers did against the
Do you have
Padres.
like a run differential?
I will have it if I don't have it. I thought I had it in the sheet, and I'm going to grab that while we're chatting.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was, it's bad when late in the season they played each other. They played the Dodgers tight.
Close.
I think they played one. They won one game out of 3, and 2 of them were tight. and then they used Manaea as kind of a like, we're gonna lose this game anyway, kind of move, because they could have used Darvish, but they wanted to set Darvish up right for the postseason. So, yeah.
All right, 19 games in the regular season. The Dodgers went 14-5 against the Padres. The run differential was plus 62 in favor of the Dodgers.
Oh,
that's rough.
But
it doesn't matter. You're not playing on aggregate.
That means the average game they won by 3 runs.
Yeah, well, they did that to a lot of teams. So
yeah, that's true.
It's not unique to the Padres. The Dodgers are very good.
I did the pitching pitching matchups for this one, and the only glimmer of hope I have is that the Padres staff actually had a better stuff plus than the Dodgers staff in September. And the reason that's only a glimmer of hope is that September was when the Dodgers were getting healthy. So it doesn't include a lot of Tony Gonsolin or Clayton Kershaw or Blake Trinan, guys that could have moved the needle on that stuff plus number.
I think it's fair to ask some questions about the health of the Dodgers, though. I mean, how effective and how deep do you expect some of those injured or previously banged up starters to go? Like, what do you think they're going to get from Gonsolin? He got 2 innings, I believe it was, against Colorado in his last regular season appearance. That was back on October 3rd. I imagine he's probably thrown on the side since then just to stretch out a little more. So does he go 4 or 5 in his next outing? Is that on the table?
Yes, and I also don't know if it matters so much. We've seen Tony Gonsolin blow up in the postseason. We've seen that he sometimes had inconsistent command, but the safety blankets this year in the Dodgers organization are pretty good. Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney put up 250 innings of a 2.72 ERA.
Yeah, that's good.
So if Tony Gonsolin goes 3 or 4, especially now you had a righty, over the top righty throwing splitters, and now here comes a low slung lefty throwing back foot sliders and Andrew Heaney, or a lefty with a changeup and Tyler Anderson. So I think that softness around the edges there's the safety blanket of Andrew Heaney and Tyler Anderson is pretty good. Now they're not fire breathing monsters where you're like, oh, when we have Steven Strider or Lance McCullers. It's not like the Astros are in better shape, right? It's like they could have Lance McCullers as a safety blanket who's going to come in, and he is kind of a fire breathing monster, definitely when compared to like Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney. But it's still a pretty good one. It is funny sometimes when you look at a team that wins a ton of games, and then you're like, but are they that good? Like if we play the bullpen game, I think it's Vesey and Phillips. They said that Trinan makes the roster, but they said they couldn't speak to his role. So that doesn't make me think that that's the real Trine of the capital T, coming back.
No, but Dustin May is probably going to work in shorter relief stints.
There's your fire-breathing monster.
There's your guy that you add him to the bullpen. You're like, oh no, that's an A bullpen. It's still good.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you do your Dustin May and your Lance McCullers, and you use Haney and Anderson as bridges if anybody goes short. You've got Urias, who's a top 10 pitcher in the league. You've got Kershaw, who's Kershaw. I think, this is going to be a hard one for the Padres.
I keep staring at this Padres lineup and just wishing Tatis were in it. His own doing, he's not there because of his own choices, but yikes, like that would help so much, especially
so much better
when you consider that the way the Dodgers are set up right now. If Gonsolin's not quite fully stretched out, you could probably argue that it's Kershaw, Urias, and then Tyler Anderson as their three best starting options
so then
right now.
Then Haney and May are their only,
Mm-hmm. And it being
one more
righty, would be great. I mean, especially a righty as good as Tatis is, but he's not here, so we don't have to talk about it. The amazing thing about the Padres series, by the way, against the Mets is Trent Grisham, who had a brutal regular season.
Oh my God,
in a big way. He had an amazing
homer
series.
Up to Grom. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
Grisham really showed. If they handed out MVPs for wild card series, he was the MVP. And that's the only kind of story I feel like I can tell is like, what if Grisham is just on fire? Like, what if he has like an Arozarena type run? Then all of a sudden the lineup looks totally different. If Soto and Machado are just trying to keep up with Trent Grisham.
If you're getting clutch homers from the bottom third of the order, sure, you're running hot and you can beat anybody. Don't know if that's going to work as well against a lefty heavy group of Dodger starters, especially.
Yeah, Grisham is kind of poor against lefties.
I always have this soft spot for the Padres. Like I want the Padres to be a successful team. I want teams that make trades and spend more money than expected to do really well. And you can try and come up with those scripts, and they exist. They absolutely exist. I just can't do it. I can't pick against the Dodgers here. I think this is a series that probably goes 4. I think the Padres get 1 in San Diego, but I think that's all they're going to get in this series.
Yeah, it's tough for me to. I think I almost want to move past it and now say, let's go to this. Let's pick an upset. Who is the upset? Guardians?
So you are taking the Dodgers, right?
Yes, I'm taking the Dodgers. I want to take the Dodgers and then maybe take the Padres as my upset. But let's say who would it be? The Guardians, the Phillies, the Mariners against the Astros, the Padres against the Dodgers. Like, I think I would love to take the Padres or Mariners as teams to upset, but I don't want to take them to upset the teams they're facing.
There's a difference between picking what you think is going to happen based on likelihood, in which case you would end up with chalk very often,
which we just did.
That's what we just did. But then there is hey, which of these underdogs is most likely to come through? So I think this is the right way to think about the question. I actually think it's the Guardians. Yeah. I think the Guardians
pepper, just singles and singles and singles.
I think
great command from their starters.
The main reason I've talked myself into the Guardians as a team that can beat anybody is because they don't strike out. They play good defense. They do have just enough guys that can do some damage to get by, and they pitch so well. And I think when I look at the Yankees, it's very top heavy. It would be, I don't want it to happen in the sense that I want Aaron Judge's season to be defined more by the team success. I want him to be happy about what happened in October and not just like happy with himself but disappointed with the team, because I feel like that's a terrible thing to have to sit with.
Oh, the Mets. I'm sorry. It was a good season. I promise. It just didn't end well.
Didn't end well. It doesn't end well for 29 teams.
That's right.
That's just how it goes. So I'm putting the Guardians in the most likely upset. If you said you got to take one underdog, I actually think it's the Guardians, even though I didn't make that series go 5 in my prediction. I think I agree with you saying it's likely to go Yankees in 4.
Yeah. There's no intellectual consistency to what I'm about to say. There's no real reason to pick them, but I'm gonna pick the Padres. I don't know, man. If Grisham is going to be useful at all, and then we haven't really seen Manny and Soto go off. Like, what if Manny and Soto go off? That's a pretty good duo. Like Manny, Soto, and Bell. Like, what if those guys go off?
They could. They absolutely could.
In Suarez, Garcia, and Hader, I kind of see that the average fastball velocity between Suarez, Garcia, and Hader is 100 miles an hour.
That's also pretty good.
And they're lefties and righties, and I can tell the story in my head. It's Soto and Machado finally go off. Machado could win the MVP. He was that good. I would say for me, the NL MVP is between Machado and Arenado, actually, because they provided
probably in there too.
I know he's in there, but for me, it's the decision is between Arenado and Machado, because they provided more defensive value, and then given that level of defensive value, now you can compare their offenses. And I know that Goldie had a really outstanding offensive year, but I do think Arenado and Machado gave more defensively. And so I'm willing to actually just compare them two. So anyway, top 3 in the MVP. And, this is his time. And he's also he's cold as ice, dude. You know what I mean? He is cold as ice, even almost more than Soto, I think. Like he gets up there. I have never seen him sweat, I feel like. So I know I'm telling stories. We normally hew closer to the data, but I wanted to leave that last section in as let's tell some stories, because October's about stories. You have all these numbers, but then October, doesn't care. So my story is Manny Machado and Juan Soto finally get hot, and the Padres slew Goliath. Slay Goliath.
I think there are plenty of people who'd be happy with many of these upsets happening, given how often we've seen the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Astros, and the Braves playing deep into October. And
baseball would love a Yankee Dodgers series, probably.
Oh, baseball, for the sake of the ratings, wants chalk on chalk on chalk right now. That's exactly what the league would want if the league wants such things. I think the Guardians are going to do it with pitching, though, if they do it. It's going to be just lower scoring games. They're not going to outslug the Yankees. That part is pretty obvious. They're not going to win a bunch of 6-5 games to do it. It's that they found a good strategy for keeping Judge, or at least the hitters around Judge, quiet. So if Judge does his damage, it's solo homers. Like that's kind of the mitigation strategy as it comes to keeping the Yankees off the board. But
if the Phillies do it, I think it's slugfest.
Yep, I think if the Phillies win, it's a slugfest. I think the Mariners too. I think if
the Mariners win, I think they play them tight and win like 3-2.
I think it's more 5-4, 6-5 type games if the Mariners win that series. I think I know their pitching's not bad, but I think it's fatigue on the Astros starting pitching in particular, with Verlander coming off Tommy John. McCullers is relatively fresh because he missed so much time during the regular season, but we've seen it with Luis Garcia before where you get those late season fades. Javier hasn't done it as a starter at the big league level over the whole season. Right. So I think that's the story that would come through for me. It's, the Astros, they were amazing in the regular season. Starters just got a little fatigued, weren't as effective. Mariners put runs on the board against them, and it ended up being a lot of, 5-4, 6-5 type games.
Well, we got a fun weekend in front of us with more games, with frankly, better quality teams now. We're bringing in the big hitters, the Braves, the Dodgers, the Yankees. Now it's time to get serious.
Yeah. Only gets better from here. If you got questions for a future episode, you can find us on Twitter. Eno's at Eno Saris. I am at Derek Van Riper. The Athletic Baseball Show returns on Tuesday. Enjoy the series.
You've always got the green light here.